Good afternoon, Greater Boston Association of Realtors. Jason Gell, your 2020 president here. Really excited to bring another town hall to you. We have a great lineup. Really excited to have these guests with us today. Just a quick reminder of the ground rules for how we're operating before we jump into our panelists. First of all, if you have any questions, please make sure you submit the questions using the question feature and not the toolbars. As we work through, or as we engage with the different panelists, I will be reading those questions off to them on your behalf. So if we don't get to your questions, I'll try and circle back to them at the end of each section. So please make sure you use the questions feature for me to keep track. So introducing our panelists. First, we want to recognize Chase Bank, who is our webinar sponsor. We couldn't do these without the support of our affiliate members and sponsors. So thank you very much, Chase Bank. We have Paul Pachowski here, Vice President and Mortgage Banking Home and Lending Manager at Chase. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Regarding workplace reentry, a topic that's going to be big on our plates for the next few weeks and months, Deanne Romerowitz, and she's Associate Counsel in the Legal Department of the National Association of Realtors. Thanks for joining us, Deanne. And regarding from BOMA, we're really excited to have an interdivisional member joining us from, he is the president of the Boston chapter of the Building Owners and Managers Association, Sean Collins. Thanks for joining us, Sean. And Holly Haynes is joining us. She is the COO of MLS PIN. She'll be talking about virtual open houses and other system enhancements. Thanks for joining us, Holly. And of course, our incomparable Executive Vice President, John Dolczewski, will be giving us some additional updates of some of the recent actions as the Board of Directors have taken to help the association. So jumping into our first panelist, Paul Pachowski, Vice President of Mortgage Banking and Home Lending at Chase Bank. He oversees a team that supports Chase's retail bank branches in upstate New York and New England with new home purchase financing, residential mortgage refinancing, and home equity lending products. Paul is a GBAR affiliate member, and Chase Bank is a diamond partner with GBAR for 2020. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thank you, Jason. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I hope everybody is safe and well out there in these very daunting, unforeseen times that we're in. Very excited to be a part of this call today. Chase as a whole is extremely excited once again to be in partnership with GBAR as a diamond sponsor for 2020. Nobody expected the changes that we're foreseeing right now. We're trying to take a business as usual approach. And just by way of just education, I wanted to share with you guys just how big this is for Chase in the New England-Boston market. The New England market right now is the largest expansion market that we have for JP Morgan Chase, the largest in the U.S. In a time where lots of organizations and banks are actually shutting their doors on branches, we're actually opening them. As you've seen probably around the Boston market, we've actually opened 21 branches thus far, 16 right in the Boston market. We have another 7 slated for this year and another 4 slated for 2021. When everything's said and done, the New England market as a whole, we're going to have 60 plus branches between Boston, between New Hampshire, Rhode Island, so the New England market as a whole. So we're very, very excited about that. As of right now, as Jason had mentioned, I currently cover all of upstate New York and the New England market. I picked up the New England market back in October of last year, and my first exposure to GBAR was the road show. And I have to tell you, I was very, very impressed with that event, with the attendance of that event, and just genuinely excited to continue this partnership with GBAR. Right now in the Boston market, I currently have 7 what we call HLAs, Home Lending Advisors. And another great thing about expansion is we are actually in the process of sourcing a potential 3 to 4 another HLAs in the Boston market. So we're actually hiring, if you can believe it, in in these unprecedented times right now. We're trying to take as much as possible a business as usual approach within the lending environment. We're still very, very busy. I've been joking that despite COVID, you couple that with historical low rates, and it's kind of a double whammy, if you will. So we're extremely busy with all the HLAs working from home, working remotely right now. Still very competitive. I know some of the press that was out there, we did get, I guess you could call some negative press around limited FICOs and loan to values that we would allow. We're still very competitive in the jumbo space, and we do have other programs that will allow people and clients to get into homes right now. So excited about the partnership again, Jason. Look forward to hopefully meeting all of you at some point in time through this journey, and I can't wait to get back out into the Boston market. I actually live in Syracuse, New York, but I'm in Boston every other week, typically Tuesday through Thursday every other week. So excited to be a part of it again, and Jason, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sponsoring us, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next roadshow, which may be early 21 at this point. So thank you again for your support.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving into Deanne Romerowitz. Deanne is Associate Counsel, Legal Department of the National Association of Realtors. Her focus is in the development of risk management resources for members. She works with General Corporate Law and NAR's insurance program. Previously, she was General Counsel for the Greater Las Vegas Association of Realtors, and she'll be discussing a few great topics and timely topics, importance of communication and signage, and effectively managing workplace reentry, employer policies and employer and staff preparedness, special employee considerations, and NAR's workplace reentry checklist. Deanne, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, and thank you to GBAR for inviting NAR to be a part of today's webinar. It's truly a delight to be here and to discuss some of the resources that we have available to you as realtors. So in the sort of chat box over to the right-hand side, there's all the handouts are available to you. So the handouts that I'll be discussing are the workplace reentry guidelines, as well as the additional resources link PDF. So let's jump right into it. So last week, NAR published a workplace reentry checklist to assist brokers and realtor associations alike to think through all the various pieces of a reentry plan. And again, you've got those resources available to you. But before we talk about some of the specifics, let's just keep a couple of things in mind as we go through my part, as well as Sean's part, and even Holly's presentation today. First and foremost, everyone's health and safety should be the forefront of any workplace reentry plan. Next, your reentry plan must comply with state guidelines. For example, the new mandatory safety standards for workplaces that Sean will go more into that were just released by your governor yesterday, I believe. And any further guidance that may be produced by the state or the CDC or OSHA. And that brings up my next point to keep in mind is that as we've seen over the last 9 or 10 weeks, this is a very fluid and dynamic situation, which requires flexibility and adaptability. And you've already shown you're capable of doing that. The entire industry has been amazing in sort of transitioning very quickly to this new situation in which we find ourselves. So I have no doubt that you are well prepared to put together an effective and workable workplace reentry plan. Again, it's important to stay on top of any updates from the state, the CDC, as well as localities where you have your offices. What we're seeing across the country, especially in major metropolitan areas, is if there are multiple localities, municipalities, even counties in which you have different offices, the guidelines might be different in different places. So something to keep in mind as we work through this. And here's the good news. A lot of the policies and trainings and everything we're going to talk about today, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the work has been done for you. there are sample policies and resources to help. In that additional resources handout, there are lots of links, for example, to the CDC website. They have fantastic resources, printables, like talking about hand washing, how to properly put on and remove a face covering, and step-by-step details for properly cleaning and disinfecting surfaces, including your vehicle, which I know is very important to real estate professionals. Now let's talk through some of the points that are on that reentry checklist, including broker preparedness and policies, agent and team member preparedness and training, special considerations for employees, as well as communications, and as Jason mentioned, signage as well. Now on the broker preparedness and policies, excuse me, it really falls into two basic categories of general safety and then COVID-19 specific measures. So under general safety measures, it's things like exploring workplace policies and procedures that promote social distancing. That's one of the requirements of the recently enacted Massachusetts mandatory safety guidelines, such as encouraging continued remote work and staggering office hours for agents. For example, some brokers in states that have already opened that I've spoken to are limiting the number of people in their offices to 10 people at a time. And they're working on systems to schedule when different agents will be in the office to keep that staggered system in place. And so you don't have 50 people in the office at one given time. Now, for team members who typically do work in the office, it's important to consider whether they will have daycare or school issues, perhaps elder care issues that come up, and to remain flexible with them. In terms of who to bring back to the office first, think about those team members whose positions are best performed in the workplace. Maybe you have a receptionist or an office manager. Again, think about bringing them in first while still providing flexibility if they do have special considerations. It's important to limit in-person meetings. Now, your state or city may have specifications on the number of people who can be together at any one given time, again, remaining socially distant 6 feet apart. But also consider, limiting in-office meetings. Keep those virtual meetings going. If there's one thing that we've all built our skill set on or been trying to build our skill set on, it's having virtual meetings. So let's continue those, at least for the foreseeable future. You can think about limiting guest access to your building and your office, and establishing a policy for participating in meetings and events outside of your office. So for example, major networking events or going to large conferences, things of that nature. At the beginning of COVID-19, we saw a lot of workplaces saying, hey, if you've been to a conference, if you've been traveling, we want you to self-quarantine and work from home for 14 days. Consider including something like that even in your reentry plan. And that brings me to the specific COVID-19 policies. What do you do if an agent reports being diagnosed with COVID-19? It's important as we come back to the workplace, as that begins to happen, to require all agents and team members to stay home if they are sick. We cannot say it enough. Stay home if you are sick. And it's okay to ask someone if they're staying home because they're sick, if they're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19. And along with that, ensure privacy. Ensure the privacy of every agent and every team member who makes a COVID-19 report to you, and clearly articulate your commitment to maintaining their privacy. Consider one thing to think about, and there's no right answer here. Consider whether you'll do daily contactless temperature checks on agents, staff, and guests before they're permitted entry into the building, and whether to hire a trained medical professional to conduct those checks. One broker I spoke with, whose office is opening very soon, I believe she's in Missouri, said she's planning to use a forehead thermometer to monitor everyone who's entering the office. Now, there are pros and cons to conducting temperature checks, And as I said, there's really no one or right answer here. Now, what will you do if an agent reports that they've been diagnosed with COVID-19? It's important to establish and communicate the protocol for agents to report if they've been diagnosed, if they're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, or if they've been exposed to COVID-19. For example, if one of their household members has been diagnosed with COVID-19, that's something that you would want to know as the broker so that you can activate your plan. Now, for that plan, NAR has a sample preparedness plan that's available to you. There's a link to it in the additional resources handout that goes through step by step what to do, who do you call, who should they contact. And it's important to communicate those protocols to your agents and then activate those if you do get a report of COVID-19 within your workplace. And of course, if someone comes down with COVID-19 or they're suddenly exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms while they're in the workplace, first of all, they need to go home. Anyone who's feeling sick, but particularly with COVID-19 symptoms, needs to return home. And at that point, you would want to thoroughly clean and disinfect their workspace, any place in the building, in your office in which they had been, and then inform others who've been in contact with that agent or staff member that they potentially were exposed to COVID-19. Again, maintaining confidentiality of the individual involved, but letting other people know you may have been exposed. Another thing to consider is whether you'll have agents and even clients complete a health certification prior to re-entry to the workplace, affirming that they've not had COVID-19 symptoms in the last 14 days. And if they've previously tested positive, to monitor their symptoms and attest that their symptoms have been resolved, and even perhaps getting a negative test back in accordance with medical guidelines. Okay, so that's what you can do as a broker to be prepared and some of the policies and protocols to have in place. Now let's turn to how do you communicate all that and prepare and train your agents and staff members who will be returning to the office. Clearly set expectations in advance. This is where communication will be key, letting people know in advance what they can expect when they return to the office, with a strong emphasis on agent and client safety, the value you place on your agents, and their security. Within the office, encourage contactless interactions through the increased use of technology. So just because we can go next door to someone's office and have a chat doesn't mean we can't still, pick them up on Zoom and have that inter-office communication virtually. So do still encourage that. Train agents and your team members on proper sanitation and prevention techniques, including proper use of face coverings and PPE, and when and where PPE is required. So it may turn out that if an agent has their own office with a door and they're in the office by themselves, maybe they're able to remove their mask. So from what I understand right now, on re-entry to the workplace, masks will be required. But perhaps if they're in their private office with the door closed, they may be able to remove that mask. That's something to keep in mind and to look for in more detailed guidance from your state. Now, when you have all this ready to go, you know what your plans and your protocols are. It's important to schedule time and a virtual training for all of your agents and staff members on the new protocols that you'll be introducing in the office, including, keep educating them on hand hygiene, washing their hands for 20 seconds, cleaning protocols that you've introduced in the office, that you talk to your janitorial staff, what supplies you'll be providing them, if you're going to introduce staggered work hours and any other new normal for the office, prepare them and train them on that ahead of time. It's a good idea to record those trainings and make them available to all agents and their team members. As I said, continue to educate. Just because we're going back to the workplace doesn't mean that the virus is gone. So continue to educate your agents on the symptoms and signs of COVID-19, health monitoring practices, and appropriate workplace behaviors. And this is an important point that I want to make sure that we talk about is if there are well-being resources. Let's face it, a lot of people are very stressed out right now about COVID-19. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's even overwhelm because there's a lot of information out there. If there are well-being resources that are available to your agents through the state, county, or city, or anywhere else, let them know about that. Continue your support of your agents. As I said, just because they're coming back into the office doesn't mean that all the support that you've given them these last many weeks goes away. Continue to support your agents. Now, that brings up some special considerations. If you do have employees, and particularly the ADA, American with Disabilities Act, applies if you have 15 or more employees. You must provide reasonable accommodations to anyone with an ADA qualifying disability. That may include staff members with pre-existing mental conditions that have been exacerbated by COVID-19. So be sure to engage in an interactive process with that employee for any accommodation requests. Now, here's an important point. It's okay to ask if someone's exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms, but do not ask agents or employees if they have an underlying medical condition that makes them more vulnerable to COVID-19. Now, we've all seen the news reports, we've seen the public alerts about who is more vulnerable. Particularly, it could be people who are 65 and older, or if they have pre-existing underlying conditions. But it's not okay to ask if they have that. And then for those people who may be in that higher category, provide them greater flexibility, but don't compel them to stay home. For example, if you have an agent who seems to, on the surface, fit the, sort of increased risk of COVID-19 because of their age or other health conditions that you may happen to know about, not without asking them, you can't require them to stay home. They're aware of the risks, and again, provide greater flexibility if they do want to continue working from home. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, provide flexibility if you have team members with childcare or elder care obligations. And I can't continue from this section without talking about fair housing. While you're engaging with customers and clients, the Fair Housing Act still applies. So last week, NAR issued guidance. There's a link to it in those additional resources PDF. There's comprehensive guidance on complying with the Fair Housing Act during COVID-19. And that will, of course, apply even as we come back into the workplace. All right, let's finally talk about communications and signage. What should you be communicating about to your agents and your clients, and what do you say? So Aon Risk Solutions, which is NAR's insurance broker, did a survey last week of over 1,400 businesses about what they're thinking about with workplace reentry. 81% of them said their number one priority for communication is new health protocols and safety protocols and processes. People want to know what you're doing to keep them safe. They want that reassurance. It will help calm them down and make them ready to come back to the workplace. People want to know how you're adapting to the new normal. So a great place to start with your communication is to look at those 4 aspects of safety protocols that are being required by your state. Sean will go into them in just a minute, and look at those 4 things and say, hey, here are the 4 new mandatory safety protocols, and here's how we're going to integrate those into our office. Here's how we're complying. Here's how we're going to keep you safe when we return to the office. Use all appropriate communication channels, such as virtual meetings, emails, if you have an intra-office intranet, or if you maybe have a private Facebook group for just your agents and employees. Those are all great places to post these trainings, to post the information, the little memes and graphics from the CDC. You can post those around the office, and engage in 2-way communication. Solicit feedback from your agents. How are they feeling? Are they ready to come back to the office? What are their concerns? Engage in that dialogue and find out how you can address their concerns. You know, someone like me, I'm ready to go back to the office. I'm tired of being home, but there may be people who aren't ready for that step, who are fearful for whatever reason. And, you know, validate those reasons. There could be, you know, a dozen different reasons that people are still afraid to come back. Do what you can to address their concerns. Again, schedule virtual meetings with your staff and agents to communicate how you're changing policies, what you're going to be doing, and promptly share updates. So for example, these new guidelines that came out from the state yesterday, and those are going to be augmented and changed over the next few weeks. Be the source of that information, right? We're so used to being the source, the trusted source of information for clients. Now you as the broker can be the trusted source of information for your agents as this, you know, situation evolves and as you adapt to it. So let's talk real quickly about signage, and then I'll turn it over to Sean for his piece. But I want to just talk briefly about signage, and it can start at your front door. I saw this, this is actually from Utah. Something they're requiring for all bricks and mortar businesses to have is a sign on the front door that says, hey, if you're sick, please don't come in. I mean, it starts with something that basic and simple. If you're exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, don't come in. When you enter, please maintain a 6-foot distance. Please wear a face mask, avoid handshaking and physical contact. So really, again, we're setting those expectations from the moment they walk up to your door. You can post signs on the mirror in the bathroom reminding people about hand washing. Again, the CDC, there's links in those additional resources, has all kinds of announcements, posters, little things you can print and post around your office to keep hygiene and safety top of everyone's mind, keep social distancing top of everyone's mind as we come back into the workplace. And finally, as real estate professionals, coming back to the workplace is the beginning of hopefully returning to sort of pre-COVID-19 real estate business. And NAR will be providing guidance on in-person showings. When we're allowed to continue with in-person showings or come back with in-person showings, NAR will be providing that guidance. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks that'll be ready for you. So please keep your eyes peeled for that. And with that, I will ask Jason what questions we have.
Awesome. Well, that was a lot of information, and there's so many practical considerations, obviously, with opening our offices and getting back to work. I'm sure it's really scary for everyone. We didn't get a lot of questions from the audience, but I did want to ask the importance of fresh air in opening, and do you have any guidance on that?
That is one of the items, and I don't know if Sean's going to kind of go into the HVAC, you know, aspect of this as well, the ventilation. That is something that I have been reading a lot about, seeing a lot, and you know, some of the newest guidance is it's those enclosed spaces for extended periods of time that we really need to be concerned about, which is why a lot of, you know, the gatherings are still restricted. So I think if you have the ability to open windows, luckily it's, you know, springtime, get some fresh air in there. Speak with your building, and again, Sean, you may go into this as well. Speak to your building about the ventilation system. Can you get, you know, new filters into your ventilation system? And I do think that air quality is going to be an important conversation, and I think there's really no beating fresh air. So that's a great question, Jason. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And that is a great segue, I guess, to bring in Sean Carroll. And Sean, thank you so much for joining us, both from BOMA and from CBRE. So really happy to have you joining us from GREB. Sean's going to be talking a little bit about premises readiness, the physical workspace issues, and space reconfiguration considerations. Obviously, our offices aren't going to look like they used to look. As well as procurement planning as it relates to health, hygiene, safety, and building supplies. I think a lot of people would like to know how we get disinfectant. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks for joining us, Sean.
Thank you very much, Jason. And Because we're not necessarily a traveling band for this webinar, there may be some repetition from this piece, but I'll try to cut a lot of it out because so much of what I had have as some notes on the tenant side have already been covered due to that great presentation that Dan had done just before me. So thank you for having me. My name is Sean Carroll. I'm the 2020 BOMA Boston president. Picked a wonderful year for that honor, but it has been an exciting time for sure, and we've been able to get a lot of great collaboration within the industry, really from February to present, working around this issue here as it affects the commercial real estate sector in the state of Massachusetts. So I thought I'd start off with just going over some of the, the governor's issuance of his 4-phased approach to reopening Massachusetts yesterday, and just briefly touch along some of those talking points, for the group. It's pretty new information. It's, still being absorbed, and it's still being waiting upon to be clarified as we get closer and closer to May 18th, when I think this plan is to be presented before us. But if you look at the 4-phased approach to reopening Massachusetts, it starts in our current state, which is the work at home advisory that has been in place for weeks now. And then it jumps into a phase 1 start, which is built upon limited industries resuming operations with severe restrictions in place. And as was touched upon in the earlier presentation, I think that's going to be built upon really limiting individual contact, person-to-person contact. So if your business can operate without having any person-to-person interaction, I think you're most likely to be part of that initial phase 1 start. It advances into phase 2, which is additional industries being able to resume their operations with restrictions in place with capacity limits. So there you may see more small businesses, more retail, even some more restaurants, food services industry operations that with a strict limit on how many people that they can serve, especially internal within their premises. Those individual organizations will be part of a phase 2, nicknamed cautious reopening. Advancing then further down the line to a phase 3, vigilant has been that tagline, which will most likely forecast additional capacity, allowing softening of some of the restrictions and being able to add additional capacity for that operations business, additional restaurant seating, additional store capacity, additional office use. So these items to be a little bit more clearly defined here in days to come. Hopefully we'll get a little bit more information as we proceed along this business week before we get to Monday, because I know there's a lot of industries that are looking to get back to work in some capacity before we ever to advance to a phase 4, which is taglined as new normal, which would incorporate some degree of a vaccine or some degree of a really true treatment program. Looking at, part of this phase 4-phased plan with the state of Massachusetts has mandatory safety standards that will need to be adhered to. And this is similar to some of the information we've been receiving over the past couple of weeks from other states like Ohio and Georgia and Minnesota and states of that nature, emphasizing safety standards that will be mandatory. There will be some standards that will be suggested, but there are some of them that are going to be required in order for you to open your business. It is built around the social distancing best practices. You're going to see a lot of language in regards to maintaining that 6 feet apart separation, both inside and the outside of workplaces. Protocols to ensure employees, can practice social distancing. So best practices in regards to, accessing your office space, egressing your office space, navigating around your floor plate if you have a large office, and any other protocols in regards to ensuring that your employees are educated on social distancing. It was mentioned in the earlier presentation as well. Signage, they're going to want to see the deployment of signage to help overemphasize this fact of social distancing. Is the natural nature for people to want to get together. Having still been working periodically in the city of Boston throughout this crisis, you still see people kind of having a hard time understanding the need to be distant from each other. There's just a natural fiber to getting together when you see people, especially when you haven't seen people in a long time. And then the requirement for face coverings. You know, the other states, a lot of the other states that came out of the starting blocks a few weeks ago have had this as part of their plan, and it is highly likely that the state of Massachusetts will continue that policy as we move forward to help decrease the amount of exposure for people to the virus. There'll be hygiene protocols that will need to be in place, really just built around, again, communication and re-emphasizing this to your staff, your employees, your guests, your visitors on the importance of hand washing. Now notice that they didn't state, you know, hand sanitizer, they used the term hand washing. You know, there's a capacity issue for a lot of supplies now. There are items that are hard to obtain, that are scarce in nature, hand sanitizer being at the forefront of all of them. But still, the CDC's highest guideline request is that people with warm soap and water continue to wash their hands, and I believe that they're making they're allowing for that as part of this guideline. Ensuring people are educated on frequent hand washing and providing sanitation, disinfecting of certain high touch areas such as workstations, equipments, telephones, keyboards, doorknobs, restrooms, anywhere around the work site that has individuals physically working there. They're going to want that the employer maintain good disinfecting, cleaning in those high touch point areas. Cleaning and disinfecting in general will be a highly emphasized point. In regards to businesses establishing cleaning protocols, most notably in regards to disinfecting and what is known as electrostatic cleaning, which has been very popular over the past month to 2 months in cleaning and quickly being able to disinfect a space when a confirmed infected employee, visitor, guest has been notified. Or employer has been notified of an infection within their space. You know, we're seeing an increased level of disinfecting of common areas, elevators, turnstiles, lobby areas, reception desks, etc., being part of a base building protocol. Most office buildings, especially in urban areas as downtown Boston, have implemented enhanced disinfecting policies. Really from late February to present, and still maintain those throughout the crisis as a best practice. So, you know, touching upon some of the items that, you know, the property management, commercial real estate, landlord, practical best practices have been explored upon over the last couple of weeks. You know, right now, property managers and their clients, their landlords, have been working on really building by building individual plans to help facilitate a return to work, a re-entry into the work space for non-essential employers who have not been working throughout the COVID-19 crisis. So, you know, no two buildings are alike. So really each property manager, each group is working on their account on an individual basis. Some buildings have multiple entrance points, some do not. So each building has to be handled in a different manner. You know, I think when we return to work, you're going to see a lot of changes in egress, entrances and exits to and from properties. There'll be dedicated entrances, there'll be dedicated exits, there can be dedicated stairwells that go up and down, etc. And you'll see a lot of signage in regards to that guidance. There's going to be the constant communication, kind of similar if we look towards the retail sector and how the retail sector has, for essential businesses, has communicated social distancing best practices throughout the crisis. You're going to see a lot of floor plate signage, see a lot of decals, door signage. You'll see a lot of other you know, recommendation for social distancing signage and best practices for staying at home and communicating people before they even enter a premises that if they're not feeling well, to please not enter a particular office building. There'll be a PPE requirement for people who are in the building services industry. I know kind of coming right out of the gates in February, people are a little bit reserved and apprehensive about having people wearing PPE as a deterrent, as due to simply the cosmetic nature. But that has done a 180 since then, and you're already seeing people in most work settings having protective personal equipment, masks, gloves to protect the individual, and you're going to see that as part of the reentry process for sure. You know, the individual's role will have a huge place, and when we're having conversations with our internal stakeholders and with other representatives of the medical industry, you know, really you're talking about people from the moment they leave their home to the moment they get home, having personal accountability for their own health care and their own protection. So the emphasis on PPE for the individual is going to be at the forefront. You know, and due to this scarcity of some supplies, you know, the employer may need to be more accountable for the purchasing of a variety of different products to open their business, most notably, you know, hand sanitizer and or the disinfecting of their space. Similar to what we heard earlier, on an occupancy basis, we're hearing a lot of our tenants, a lot of our commercial tenants, you know, giving us feedback already that they anticipate an extremely flexible work schedule, knowing that a lot of their personnel have to account for healthcare related concerns, childcare concerns due to the fact that daycare centers and schools have been closed and will remain closed through the end of the school season. You know, they're forecasting about a, you know, a 25% or less occupancy. There are tenants, I'll say, larger tenants who are not planning to come back to work until the 4th of July that have already been communicated. There are some large tenants that have already stated that they'll not have anything greater than a 25% occupancy through the summer of 2020. We're estimating a rough return around Labor Day. And there are a couple of tenants that have stated that until such time as a vaccine or a notable treatment is provided, that they don't anticipate a full return to their office component until the end of the calendar year. You're going to see a lot of split staffing, a lot of people who will divide staff up into shifts, team A, team B scenarios, so that no particular office setting gets impacted by the virus in great detail that couldn't be supplemented by the other team. And, you know, in essence, to also champion social distancing best practices. You know, on the commercial real estate sector side, you know, as was concluded at the end of the last presentation, signage is going to be at the forefront. You're going to see signs in places you don't normally have signs. You're going to see this maybe will argumentally be a little bit of signage pollution as a result, but there will be a lot of signage that will be deployed by landlords around the property in regards to entering and exiting, in regards to good hygiene practices, in regards to wellness, making sure you're not coming to work if you're sick. You know, there's really, you know, this has had a really big impact on personnel who have been really true workhorses over the course of their time. You know, that employee, that great employee, that great performer who's always been there 12 hours a day working, you know, regardless of, you know, weather or what have you. You know, this is really kind of a 180 to that, you know, where it's really in everyone's best interest if somebody is not feeling well to not come into the office building. So there'll be an emphasis on access control. You'll see some people utilizing the stairwells. Some office buildings will allow the use of the stairwells when applicable. You'll see a lot of quadrants within elevators to limit the capacity of elevator ridership. Employee tracking software, such as QIR codes have been a new thing in the suburban market, so that people know who's worked where and when on a given date in the event there is an infected person. And in regards to HVAC climate control, since Jason, it was brought up on at the end of the last piece, you know, you're seeing mostly, especially within the large office towers, people doing an immediate spring filter change before reoccupancy, changing out all the base building and tenant filters on all the HVAC mechanical equipment, especially while the tenancy is so low. I mean, most commercial office buildings have a tenancy of about 2.2 or 3% of their base building population is actually occupied at this time. So people can seize the day, change out those filters immediately, maybe up the MERV rating on the filter, which is the minimum requirement of a particular filter, upping the MERV level from a MERV 7 to a MERV 8 or a MERV 9, et cetera. You're seeing that some people dance around perhaps making some modifications to their equipment, but the science necessarily isn't there just yet. in regards to UV lighting, in regards to ionization, filtration systems, and stuff like that. So, you know, a lot of issues around temperature checks, but much similar to the earlier presentation. In temperature checks due to healthcare related laws, employment laws, liability concerns, lease language, et cetera, and landlords not wanting to ever restrict somebody's access to their space that they pay rent on, temperature checks are most likely will fall upon the employer to manage. So you will not see a lot of commercial multi-tenant office buildings or landlords implementing temperature checks, or what's known as healthcare checks right now, or healthcare screening. So I know we're probably moving over time, so I'll conclude that piece right now, but always there's opportunities for questions and answers down the line. And there's a CBRE tenant briefing guide that's been attached, an attachment to this presentation that's available for people to access. Thank you, Jason.
That's really amazing. It's the technology that's being brought in to help with this situation in the office buildings. I think it's really phenomenal. I'm not sure how you keep up with all of that, but it's a great challenge. And anything new that you saw coming into the industry that we might want to think about for smaller buildings?
You know, so no, I think there's just going to be, you're going to see more and more of the envelope pushed on touch-free devices, on hands-free devices. So whether it be thermostats, door openings that don't necessarily, due to retail nature, require a door opener. You know, you're going to see a push to that type of technology here in the future. People using their, phones for visitor access control purposes, for other like QIR scanning as well. There is an importance I've seen in the buildings that I've seen that have had some degree of occupancy, and it is an important item to understand so you can help communicate to those people, the need to know and the interest in knowing when an affected person has been disclosed, has been communicated, that you can inform the personnel who may have been working in that area, in that space, on that floor, in that building is a key critical component to the health and welfare of the community. So I think it's being able to use that data without, providing detailed healthcare information. So you're not compromising any laws or anything of that nature. It will be important.
That's interesting. So even in smaller offices, being able to track who's coming and going is going to be really important.
I've seen that in the suburban market, but that doesn't normally have access control badges to get into their space. That there is a desire to, at least be able to know, because you may or may not know that, oh, we actually had 5 people in that day, and I should reach out to them. So
awesome. Well, thank you very much. That's great information, Sean. All right, and now next up, Holly Haynes, COO of MLS PIN. She'll be talking about some new virtual open house features as well as other system enhancements that have been implemented over the last couple of months. Thanks for joining us, Holly.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. I want to bring you all up to date today on some of the latest things going on at MLS PIN since we've started navigating this new normal. Since the governor enacted the state of emergency, all of the staff at MLS PIN in Shrewsbury has been working remotely. We've been fortunate enough to have the ability to technically work remotely for some time whenever we've had large snowstorms or bad weather. Every person that works at MLS PIN is issued a laptop, and everyone has headsets and is able to log in from home and work per usual. So essentially, you really don't see a big difference between what you're doing here in the office versus what people are doing at home. It's the same thing. We're still working. We're still servicing our customers. With regards to what's going on with our transition to remote, we still do have some people that come in the office once a week to do some of the things that really do need to be handled in person. The lockbox and key services are handled via phone and fax or email. But occasionally we do have appointments where we meet somebody here at the building to either give them a lockbox or process a keypad, something to that effect. But now that the governor has issued their guidance on businesses to start the reopening process, we will be sitting down as a team and reviewing those plans carefully so that we can safely reopen our office in Shrewsbury. So with regards to what's been going on in the last, it's been 8 weeks now with COVID-19, we've made some changes in MLS Pen. We've allowed the use of virtual showings for active properties as an alternative to in-person showings. We've added a COVID-19 resource page to our company website. I hope everyone has had a chance to check that out. There's also, if you're not quite sure where to find it, on Pinergy on the homepage, there's a little ad at the corner of your screen that you can click on to actually link into our COVID-19 resource page. We've been posting important information on Pinergy for the latest resources, helpful tips, updates as to what's been going on with regards to MLS Pen. We've also moved many of our live training classes to virtual live webinar style classes. Many of these classes that you would normally have attended in person have moved online. Classes like our Pinergy market reports, Pinergy search and search results, using contacts in Pinergy, learning about Remine and Cloud CMA, Pinergy CMA. So we really reacted very quickly in that regards, where we tried to turn around and offer as much as we could in a virtual sense to our customers. The other big thing that we've been working on for a few weeks now is the virtual open house function. So this has been a big issue in our industry. People don't, want to have a traditional open house. How can we facilitate some more of a virtual type event? What we have been instructing our customers to do is to put the URL in the comments of the open house and having that be the place to go to for the virtual link. But tomorrow night, we are releasing an update to Pinergy that will allow you to specify your event as virtual, and also includes a new field called an event link or event URL, where you will copy and you paste your URL in there for your virtual open house. And the great thing about what this will do is this information will now be easily syndicated to Realtor.com and Zillow. So they'll be able to pick up that link and post that information on their websites regarding your virtual events. Now, virtual events aren't just open houses. Virtual events are also broker tours. So we've also carried that functionality over to the broker tour events. So you can schedule a virtual broker tour. We're excited to launch that. This new functionality is coming out tomorrow night. So it will be ready for you to use first thing Thursday morning. Some of the other recent things that we've added to Pinergy is there's a few different things I want to bring your attention to. I'm not sure that everyone's aware of these. So we added a listing cart function to the system a few months ago. So what that does is allows you to take listings and put them into a cart and kind of put them to the side and come back to them later. Within the cart, you can do different things with those listings. You can email them to people, you can print them, you can do all different, attach them to contacts, etc. And the other thing I wanted to remind you all about is regarding coming soon and deferral of showing listings. Just be aware that that form doesn't necessarily need to be sent to MLS Pen for you to be in compliance. All you need to do is take that form, execute it with your seller, and attach it to the listing in Pinergy, and you are good. Some other new functionality that we're coming out with is a few really great ones. Everyone's talking mobile, texting, mobile functionality. So we're coming out with a new function called Listing Watch Text Alerts. So this is a really cool function that will allow you to specify a listing that you want to watch. So if you have a property, there's a property on 22 Maple Ave, and you have a buyer that really likes the house, but the price is too high. So reach out to them immediately if the price drops. So you want to set that listing up in your listing watch text alert, so that if that property does have a price change, you're going to get an alert right on your mobile phone via text with a link to the listing information that you will then be able to copy and paste and send on to your client. We're really focusing on mobile first, and that's another new feature that's coming out. The second mobile-friendly feature we're working on is the VAL listing summary and detail views. So in the VAL today, the views are not mobile-friendly. They don't look well on the phone. And we're working really hard to make new responsive mobile-friendly listing summary and detail views, also with the ability to send a text. So in the new mobile VAL views, that client who's looking at the property and, you know, say they really like it, but they'd love to text it to their dad, you know, they'll be able to click a link and text the information of that property to whomever they'd like. Other things we're working on is the ability to resize columns in the line views of search results, listing input autosave feature. So this has been a huge pain point for probably a few years, or if not longer. So you're sitting there and you're inputting your listing, and all of a sudden the phone rings and the call takes a while, and you come back to the screen and you've been logged out because the call took a long time, and now you've lost all of that work. So now you have to go back and start from scratch and input that listing again. And how frustrating is that? So our new functionality is going to allow for autosave. So periodically, as you're inputting a listing in the MLS, the system is going to autosave it. So in that instance, coming back into Pinergy, you would see that listing was partially saved in your offline listings. So that, again, saves you time and cuts down on any frustrations. And then another great new one we're working on is a default search template. So if you're an agent who primarily deals with rentals, so every time you log into Pinergy and you go to click on search, it's bringing you to a default of a single family active properties. But if I'm not a single family agent, I deal with rentals, I want to see rental properties. I want rental property type active listings. So now I'm going to have the ability to set a default search template to my specifications so that when I go into search, when I click on search, it's going to default to rentals, active properties, and I could even specify that I want it for the Boston market. This is how detailed and customized I can get my search template to be. So these are some of the great new things that MLS Pen has been working on for the last 8 weeks while we've all been in quarantine. But like I said, we're still working hard. We're still pushing out new functionality. So to wrap up, please know, MLS Pen is committed to helping our customers navigate this new normal. We're constantly reviewing processes, including rules and regulations, customer service and training, to new functionality in the MLS system. We're essentially doing whatever we can to best serve our participants and subscribers during this challenging time. And I want to thank you so much for having me today. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Holly. We did have a quick question from our treasurer, Allison Socha. Are we able to continue to publish the virtual link in the listings remarks, even with the new virtual event option?
Yes, you can continue to put the virtual link in the comments. I would not put it in the, see, the problem is if you put it in the public remarks, some of the portals will strip that out. But I would recommend that you do not put them in the public remarks, but put them in the, if it's truly a virtual event, like a virtual open house, use that virtual tour event information for that link. It's really the best way to handle it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you've been really busy in this downtime. So thank you for all those improvements. Looking forward. I know one of my pet peeves has been preparing a listing and getting it all completed and then hitting a wrong button and then having to go re-enter information. So that's a really cool feature you're adding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know we're a little over time. And I just want to finish up with, well, first, a quick thank you again to all of our sponsors and panelists today that have done an awesome job. I know we didn't get to all the questions. I apologize for that. Some came in a little bit after the time. But thank you so much, Paul and Chase Bank, for sponsoring this event. Thank you to Deanne, Sean, and Holly for joining us. And I'm just going to leave you real quick with an update from John, our AE, who will talk to us a little bit about some of the new member benefits that we'll be able to use, as well as some upcoming events. John.
Thank you, Jason. So just very quickly, with those who may have submitted questions late, do know that we will be sending you an email tomorrow with the recording of this session, and you'll get the email addresses for all of the presenters. So if you do have a question, they've all agreed they'd be happy to answer your questions after the fact, so take advantage of that. Following up on Holly's remarks about the virtual open houses, I just want to reiterate, we've been mentioning for a few weeks now, we've got a new member benefit that we expect to roll out at the end of this week, and that is for a significantly discounted price for virtual tours through the company iSpy 360. We're finalizing the ink on that agreement now and hope to announce that by the end of the week. So that's going to offer members the opportunity for a monthly subscription of just $20. There will also be a annual subscription price that'll allow you for even some additional savings, and then $1 per image for photos with a minimum $15 for each property tour. So watch for more information on that coming out in your inbox in a few days. Just to reiterate, a lot of the information touched upon today, the resources that were referenced can be found on our coronavirus page, our microsite on gbar.org, so be sure to check that out. And I did want to plug next week's GBAR Live webinar. We're delighted to be able to feature NAR Chief Economist Dr. Lawrence Yun, who's going to give us his take on what's happening in the housing market, what to expect in the months ahead, with a little bit of a focus here, obviously, on New England and the Massachusetts market. And a new webinar we've just added, and information will be coming out in the days ahead as well. On May 27th, if you want to mark your calendars, we've secured national security expert Robert Siciliano, who's actually a Boston area guy, and he's going to be doing a session on defending against the data breach. So there's a lot of scams out there right now, a lot to be in tune with regard to cybersecurity, and so we're delighted to have him May 27th, starting at 10 a.m. So watch for information on that.
There I am, unmuting myself. I know I am extremely excited to be listening to Lawrence Yun next week with that focus on Boston. It's going to be a great event to get our sense of where we are right now based on obviously what we know and where we're going. It's been an optimistic conversation with him over the past few weeks that I've gotten a chance to hear what he had to say. So I definitely would encourage you to promote that event. It's really one of those topics that'll help you be the expert in the market. So big round of applause to our panels today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Be safe, everybody.